approaching 12:15 on Friday afternoon, November 8th, 2019, at the American Legion Post 20 on the Quarry Road in Plattsburgh, and veterans from throughout the North Country are gathering here. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik will be here to make a presentation at 12:30 to our veterans. Large portion of the media is also gathered here, and I see our State Senator Betty Little is here. And we'll come back when this program is underway on this November 8th. It's a Friday, and of course on Monday, November 11th, it's Veterans Day.
Good afternoon. We're going to turn the program over to our U.S. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik for some opening remarks.
I am so honored to be here, and I'm really blown away by the number of people that turned out to this event. As we head into Veterans Day weekend, this weekend is about gratitude. It's about thanking our heroes and those that have sacrificed and have given so much to our nation. On behalf of this community, on behalf of this country, I want to thank our Vietnam War era veterans for their service. Just so you know, this district has more veterans than any other congressional district in New York State. And one of the most important jobs of a legislator is making sure that your concerns and your issues related to the veterans community are heard at the highest levels. Whether that's in New York State, that Betty Little, Billy Jones, and Dan Steck do a tremendous job to make sure your voices are heard, or at the local level. And I'm so glad to have Supervisor Cashman here as well. Thank you to the leaders of the Legion for allowing us to host this here today. Since taking office, one of my focuses has been making sure that our veterans get access to the best constituent services possible. To date, we've been able to claim over $3.5 million of VA benefits that are owed to veterans in this district that you have earned. So I always try to put out the word when I'm speaking to veterans group. If you know of, or if you yourself are having issues with the VA, or you have friends and neighbors who are facing challenges with the VA, please reach out to my office, because we will work tirelessly, whether it's help setting up appointments or help getting access to the financial benefits that you have earned and you deserve. I also wanted to highlight a few legislative priorities that are critically important, in particular for our Vietnam War era veterans. The first is the Blue Water Navy Veterans Act. This was finally signed into law this past year, which restores benefits for thousands of sailors who served in the territorial seas of Vietnam and Cambodia. We were able to get that done after years and years of advocacy from the veterans community. Additionally, we have too many veterans who are suffering in silence from exposure to Agent Orange during their service. Two bills that I am proud to co-sponsor are the Keeping Our Promises Act, which updates the Agent Orange Act of '91 by expanding the list of medical conditions recognized as stemming from exposure to Agent Orange. The second bill is the Lonnie Kilpatrick Pacific Relief Act, and that expands the geographic territory for eligibility for, those that have been covered under the Agent Orange Act. Lastly, and the reason why we're here today, in 2008, Congress passed a law that instructed the Secretary of Defense to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War with issuing of a pin. And the purpose of this pin is to recognize, thank, and honor our veterans who served during the Vietnam War. And while I was not around during that era, that's before my time, I know that for many of you, you did not receive the thank you and the gratitude that you deserve and you earn. So we are happy to be a generation and a community that thanks you for going above and beyond, for answering the call to serve your nation and serve a cause higher than yourself. I want to talk a little bit about the pin itself, which I'm so excited to present to our Vietnam War veterans here. The pin holds important symbolism. I have a pin actually on the So the eagle, thank you. Thank you. Here, this. There's an eagle on this pin. The eagle represents courage, honor, and dedicated service to our nation. It is one of the most recognizable symbols in the United States. The blue circle. The blue circle signifies vigilance, perseverance, and justice. The laurel wreath represents victory, integrity, and strength. There are stripes behind the eagle that represents the American flag. The stars, there are 6 stars recognizing the 6 allies who served, sacrificed, and fought alongside one another. Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, and the Republic of Korea, Thailand, and the United States. And the message, a grateful nation thanks and honors you. It's embossed on the back of the pin, closest to the heart of the wearer to express the gratitude of our country to all those that have served, including and especially those of you here today. Thank you again for being here. I'm going to turn it back over to our MC, who's going to introduce our other local electeds, which I'm so glad are here. And thank you to the family members, the spouses, and children of our veterans as well. I see some of you in the audience today. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Elise. Quite an opening. It looks like you've taken my script and completely memorized it.
Sorry.
We would like to thank Congresswoman Elise Stefanik and her staff and the North Country Honor Flight for organizing this little get-together. And with us today we have Senator Betty Little, Assemblyman Billy Jones, Assemblyman Dan Steck, and our very own town supervisor, Michael Cashman. Our elected officials will have a few words to say, and at the conclusion of that, we will announce the names for the presentation of the pins. Senator Little.
Thank you so very much. This is such a special occasion, and I'm really, really happy to be here. You know, I have 2 sons who are veterans, and one served for 8 years, one just retired after 26 years, both in the Navy. And be glad to know my son now flies for FedEx, so he's delivering packages, which is, you know, still not safe. You're flying a plane at night, but it's a lot safer than what he was doing. So I want to thank all of you and thank the families. You all endure a lot of anxiety when your loved one is serving overseas. And, you know, we need to thank you. And we do thank our veterans, but you know yourself, as Elise said, when you got home from Vietnam, there weren't a lot of thank yous. It was such a, you know, we talk about our country today having a lot of arguments and divisiveness and all, but Vietnam was really one of the worst times with the divisiveness and all, and you were not treated well when you got home. So I think it's important that at some point along the line, and finally, the government came up with this pin in honor of this momentous year for the Vietnam War. And my brother-in-law served in Vietnam, and until he saw me on a television program, actually he didn't see it, his friends saw it, that diabetes was then covered as an effect of Agent Orange and would be covered by the veterans. And he had diabetes and didn't know that that was what it was even all about. And he was going to a veterans place. So much has been done in recent years to try to make up for those years. And I hope somehow you feel better about it yourselves, because people do appreciate everything that you did and the turmoil and all that you went through serving in Vietnam. So I thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all get your pin and wear it proudly, because we need to make that a better time in our history than we did when you first came home. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Senator Little. Now we have Assemblyman Billy Jones.
It is such an honor to be here. It really is, among all of you. And earlier today, or this morning, I was speaking to a bunch of 7th graders in Beekmantown. And our theme was public service and community service, and how do you give back to the community. And I can think of no other or better way to give back to our community than to honor our veterans, and volunteering organizations that help our veterans. And I expressed that. And I had said that I was coming here later on in the day for this pinning ceremony. And I had talked a little bit, even though I was not born during the Vietnam era either, but I had talked about a little bit now. I'm talking to 7th graders now. And they don't know a lot about our history, although they're learning it right now. But I was saying how, as Betty and Elise had said, how it was a stain on our society. It really was how our American society treated our veterans, Vietnam era veterans, when they came home. And how we should never, ever, ever let that happen again. And we are trying to make up for that now. In this pinning ceremony, and I want to thank the Congresswoman for inviting me here to honor all of you. This pinning ceremony does not make up for it, but we certainly continue to strive to make up for the sacrifices and how you were treated when you got home in the Vietnam era. So thank you so much for everything you have done. We can never, ever thank you enough. And thank your families for the sacrifices you made for our great nation here. Thank you.
Next, we have New York State Assemblyman Dan Steck.
Thank you. It's my honor and privilege to be with all you fellow veterans today. I can't pass up, but I had to listen to both my colleague Billy Jones, who's a good friend, and of course our Congressman both point out that that they predate or they postdate Vietnam. I was born during the Vietnam era, and I'm proud to point out that my father made the drive up with me today from Queensbury. He's a Vietnam Marine, and so you know, it's always great to be amongst fellow veterans. I was a Navy veteran myself, nuclear power. My cruiser was out of Bremerton, Washington. I served 8 years, including time in the Persian Gulf. So, you know, you're all near and dear to my heart because I've walked a couple miles in some of your boots as well. But I got to tell you that the team of all of us here in your legislature, both at the state and the federal level, are in your corner doing everything we can to help honor your service and to certainly provide the services that are owed you in any way that we can. So it's great to be here today in Plattsburgh for this important ceremony. And thank you all for your service and your sacrifice, and thank your families as well. Thank you.
And now we have our own town supervisor, Michael Cashman.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to name the year rather than skirt around it. I was born in 1980. Yeah, so very disconnected from that, but not disconnected. What I mean by that is I grew up in a household with my grandfather who was a Korean era veteran. And he shared with me and many others the need to be respectful and understanding of the values of an American and what it means to be engaged as a citizen. What you folks did for our nation then and to today is simply inspiring by your example. And we live through the light that you provide us. So from my generation to yours, thank you. The last thing I'll say is the town of Plattsburgh, working with our partners here, are working on a new Veterans Park. One of the key features of that new park will recognize and honor the Vietnam era. You deserve it. So thank you, Congresswoman, for all that you're doing to connect us locally and nationally. And God bless you folks. Thank you.
Captain, 1 second. That just goes to show you, peacetime or war, logistics is always a hard thing to hold. I want to reiterate what Congresswoman Elise Stefanik said. Congress has authorized this commemoration program as part of an effort to recognize those brave men and women for the sacrifices they made to our country. We will now make the presentation of the pins. Joseph Aubrey, United States Army, 1966 to 1969.
Right in my
Frank Berry, United States Air Force, 1970 to 1993. Curtis Banker, U.S. Army, 1942 to 1961. Robert Bergeron, United States Air Force, 1961-1965. Kenneth Bowlby, United States Air Force, 1966 to 1987. David Brown, U.S. Army, 1966 to 1968. Should have had the old gray fox. Marvin Brown, U.S. Army, 1955 to 1968. Barry L. Clark, U.S. Air Force, 1965 to 1969. Hugh Connors, United States Army, 1963 to 1969. One of our stalwarts here at Post 20. I Lawrence Cooney, United States Air Force, 1971-1991. Rick Cornish, United States Air Force, 1972 to 1979, and 1981 to 1994. With all these elongated dates of service, my God, there must be no more monsoons left in Southeast Asia. Kenneth Glad, U.S. Army, 1973 to 1979. Another stalwart of Post 20. Unsung hero, does a lot of maintenance around here. David Gordon, United States Army, 1967 to 1970. David K. Graves, U.S. Army, 64 to 2005. Also imagine about 20. You could tell he was our adjutant because the figures he has down here are a little bit transposed. Gary Hamill, United States Navy, 1968 to 1971. George Hiller, United States Army, 1960 to 1962.
Very good.
I might do it later.
Joseph LaBounty, U.S. Army, 1962 to 1965.
It's for me? Okay, perfect. I will read it. It's a perfect way to deliver it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For your service.
Thank you. That's the way to make
It
points.
is. It's going right up my butt.
Ron LeBlanc, U.S. Army Reserves and National Guard from 1970 to 2005. Greg Lee, U.S. Marine Corps, 1968 to 1969. also an integral part of North Country Honor Flight. Bonnie Monk, U.S. Air Force, 1975 to 1982. Stephen Martin, United States Marine Corps, 1971 to 1974. You can tell the Marines because they come up bare-chested.
Thank you for your service.
David Maslowski, United States Army, 1964. Colonel Joseph McNichols, United States Air Force, 1971 to 72.
He's a critical part of your plane restoration too.
Thank you.
Glenn Miller, United States Air Force, 1962 to 1967. James Mosh, United States Air Force, 1971 to 1991. Thomas Morosco, United States Navy, 1969 to 1970. Terry Morris, United States Air Force, 1966 to 1986. One of the best bean counters in the North Country. Thomas W. Murphy, United States Army, 1967 to 1970. I hope I don't screw up this next name. Thomas Nagowski, United States Air Force, 1954 to 1974, Vietnam, 71, 72.
Here we go.
Norbert Niederer, United States Air Force, 1975 to 1998. George Steck, United States Marine Corps, 1962 to 1965. Yes. The pin will be presented and pinned by his father. His father, George Steck, and Dan Steck. Robin Stein, United States Army, 1966 to 1969. Harry P. Yell, United States Army, 1966 to 1993. Harry used to be, Harry used to work out about 17 hours a day. He was the new Superman of the North Country. The following people will have their stuff mailed to them because we didn't have enough time. They weren't pre-registered. So we will call their names as we go. Frank McGrath, Air Force, in Army Reserve, 1968 to 1997. Oh, take that back. She's going to pin you now.
And we'll mail the certificates. But come on up.
Yeah, wait, Frank. Don't be mad. It's okay, Frank, no hugs on it. That's really good that we got these extra pins, because the government, in its infinite wisdom, is the first time they screwed up and gave us enough to take care of everybody in the North Country. Thank you very much. Keith Dyer, Air Force, 1976. Richard Parmelo, Air Force, 1968 to something's wrong there. 1968 to, can't be 62.
92, a long, many, many years of
A
service.
lot of difference between 62 and 92.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Floyd Rock, Army, 1965. Walt Kotzer, Air Force, 1965 to 1966.
Thank you for your service.
Good job, Chief.
What? Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your service.
Jim Devan, Marine Corps, 1967.
Thank you so much for your service. I'm going to pin you on the call.
Yes, yes.
Albert Ellerin, Army, 1972 to 1978. Albert is also a first, and it puts in a lot of time here at Post 20 to keep the lights on. Romeo Barriere, Army, 1967-1995. James McGuire, Navy, 1967-1975. Paul Baker, United States Navy, 1966 to 1969. Joseph Prue, Air Force, 1959 to 1963. A thank you to Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, Senator Debbie Willis, Representative Bill, and Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of our veterans. We are so appreciative of your service. Please, if you're not yet on veterans, reach out to my office if you're not able to come today for pins, and we will make sure that they get a certificate. Thank you, everyone.
Just introducing Michael Wayne, U.S. Air Force.
He was hiding in plain sight.
Post that up, Calvin. Post that up.
Okay.
John Master.
John Master. Marine Corps. up Hometown Cable's look at the pinning ceremony here, and as they said, this is just a fraction of the people who deserve this. If you've got people that deserve to be pinned in the Vietnam era, be sure to contact the Congresswoman's office or any of your local veterans organizations, and they'll make sure you get what's coming to you. So make sure if you know a veteran from the Vietnam era, make sure they are aware of this and prod them to get their name in that list and get their certificate and pin. Thanks for watching. For those of you who support Hometown Cable, viewer-supported local television, Hometown Cable TV, we think is worthy of your support. Thank you for watching.